Hello, everybody, and welcome to our third panel of the day. I'm so excited, you guys. We're up to $2,650, which is amazing. I'm super stoked. Again, today we're doing double raffle entries. So if you buy raffle tickets today, you'll be getting double entries. And I'm going to throw up the prizes real quick so you can kind of see what we're giving away this panel. We are going to be doing this awesome hoodie by the amazing Gypsy Sage Design and an awesome Avengers mask that Five Little Monsters made for us. It's like the softest material, this hoodie. So I'm super stoked about it. I think it's super cool. And then we're also raffling off this shirt also by Gypsy Sage Design. And a Harry Potter like Daily Prophet type mask. So pretty much we want to set you up to look good and to be safe with COVID and everything. So buy raffle tickets, help us keep earning money for the American Cancer Society. When we get into it, we'll throw up the link so that you know where to go to donate. So without further ado, I'm going to add in Stefan. I'm sorry, I know I'm saying that wrong. It's because my name's Stephanie. I'm like, everyone should sound like me, obviously. And then we'll get everyone started.
There we go. Thank you, Steph. And trust me, I'm used to that with my name. So yes, I will be your moderator for this Watchmen panel. Again, my name is Stefan, and joining me today we have Steph, as well as Robert and KB. Thank you all for joining me over on this panel.
I'm so excited.
Thanks.
So a quick little thing, let's go and do like another quick little bit of introductions and whatnot. If we can go and maybe start with KB and then Robert and then Steph, and we'll kind of go from there.
Perfect. So I'm KB. I am an entertainment journalist, host, and critic. I cover all things TV and film, anything pop culture, anything sci-fi. I love superheroes are my jam as well. And then, I support tons and tons of Black content. So Watchmen is the perfect intersection for me.
Cool. So I'm Robert. I'm a blogger, occasional cosplayer, gamer, toy photographer. I'm a slight superhero fan, as you might have seen, and really intrigued by this concept of the HBO Watchmen. So looking forward to talking about it.
Awesome. And I'm Steph. I'm a podcaster. My podcast is called Cutscenes and Cupcakes, and we talk about video gaming. And I am just a fan of Watchmen. I have no expertise, but I'm so excited to be here.
There we go. And then, yes, I am Stefan. I'm a Salt Lake City local actor, voice actor, podcaster, and as well an occasional cosplayer. So, yeah, really excited to be able to go and join you all over on this panel. So, really quick, what I want to go through is that Watchmen started off as a graphic novel that really changed the landscape in so many different ways, and then through its different media iterations has really become this cultural kind of cornerstone that a lot of us are able to go and look at these different issues with. So that's one of the reasons why we want to go and do this particular panel, because I mean, you look at what we're dealing with today and you can see the parallels quite evident through everything. So, we're going to kind of go through quite a few different little topics. And for anyone that's actually watching, feel free to go and ask your input and your questions or whatnot. We'll see those, and maybe we might go and kind of highlight some of those. So the first thing I want to go through, and I'm patching this through to the entire panel, is when we look at the different iterances that the actual series has gone through, as far as the TV show, what we're now all familiar with, the movie that happened years ago, and and the comic book. Where have you guys seen like the different liberties that these different creators have kind of been able to go and take the story? Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to start. I was trying to see if someone else wanted to. So for me, my introduction to Watchmen came with the film, the Zack Snyder film. I actually had never read the graphic novel prior to that, but I enjoyed the film. Outside of it, for just me personally, it was like wildly too long. I was like, Zach, what are we doing? This is so long. Like, I feel like we can kind of cut this in places, but it's beautifully shot. I thought it was really well acted, and I thought that that was a really good introduction to Watchmen for me. I will say with Damon's version, the TV series is wildly different, and you can obviously tell that he took some of the characters, but their stories are very unique. He created Sister Night, so that's one of the major liberties that's been taken in this television series, is that Sister Night is a brand new character, and really a brand new character created for Regina King based on like a conversation I had with Damon Lindelof about the show. He really only had Regina King in mind. And he really wanted her to be in the show. And after they had worked together in The Leftovers, Regina said she was open to it. So why not? So I think that she gives, and I don't say this lightly. I do watch a ton of content. So, and honestly, pilots, I generally never like any pilots. I'm just going to say that. It's a fair warning. But I fell in love with the Watchmen pilot because, them really centering Tulsa, which is history that I've known about just growing up in my family, and something that we discussed very kind of robustly with me and my family as a child. I didn't know where he was going with the series by starting there, but I knew that I was wildly intrigued. And I never, ever could have imagined kind of the twists and turns and all of the family dynamics that come from Tulsa in this particular series. But I thought it was brilliant. I truly thought that, what Damon was able to pull off was exceptional. And I will say that I was a little concerned at first, just because this story is so personal to a lot of Black people, that I wasn't really sure how Damon was going to be able to handle it. But I do think that he did something extraordinary with it. And I think it's truly only because, he crafted the writer's room in a way that was exceptional. He had mentioned that he also spoke to all of the actors about their personal family. So we had some sit downs with Yaya and Regina and Lou Gossett Jr. to talk about kind of their family history and be able to kind of implement that and themes of that as well. So I thought honestly, to me, it's a perfect series. I actually don't even want a second one. I thought from top to bottom it was perfect, but it's just my opinion.
Wow, I'm really going to hate to have to follow that up, but I'm going to try. One of the things that I'd actually talked about with Valerie Cameron earlier in the week was how the comic book or the graphic novel, depending on how you got it originally, was really kind of grounded in an alt history of the 60s with the Vietnam era, and then moved into a more superheroic deconstruction. But this series started with, it was kind of grounded in a actual historic event and moved into an alt future, so to speak, with, what is the future of heroes and vigilantism in that setting. And it was really interesting to see how they kind of were dark mirrors of each other, where you've got one that starts off normal, so to speak, and then branches out into the fantastic, and the other one starts with the fantastic already being known in the presence in the world and moving into just the grounding of it, and then going back to the fantastic again.
Yeah. And for myself personally, I also didn't really read the graphic novel until much later, after I'd even seen the movie. And seeing creators take liberties from the certain story to be able to go and tell something a little bit more prescient, something that that we're going to cling to today, especially when you had seen with the Zack Snyder film the effects of different forms of sexual abuse and things that were going on at that time, and making it in where you're telling this fantastical story, but it's still so grounded with what's happening today, and then you take that to the TV series, seeing writers and directors be able to take those chances with content that everyone holds dear and go like, you know what, there's a bigger message that we have with this platform. I think that's one of the reasons why you see the love of all three forms of media from everyone and going like, oh, well, it means this much to me, because rather than staying so isolated into what was put down on the page way back when, it was, let's tell a story here and let's affect people, and that's one of the reasons why I think that Watchmen, now kind of looking into the future, will always be a series that will continue to grow in a way that will always be with the people of that time. So there we go.
I was just gonna. I didn't love the graphic novel. Sorry. The movie was and I watched the show because I heard about like some of the not controversy, but about the Tulsa Massacre. Honestly, like that's one of the biggest things. Like I heard it was a great show, but then I knew about some of the content, and which is why I started watching it, because I don't like, I hate to admit, I don't think I knew about the Tulsa Massacre before this, which is, I think, like not an uncommon thing. And so I think that that's something that's really striking about this, is the way that it brings in some of that history that we weren't taught in school or were touched on in school, and not enough brought to awareness of it. I wanted to throw up Tracy's comment too, because he like felt the same way. He wasn't aware of it before this too. And I just think that's shocking that something so big and important, I don't know what, this fictional show brought it to light for a lot of people.
Yeah, I remember, like, I think I read it in an article where, someone had mentioned that, I think it might have been Damon, that the reason why he wanted to center this event is because he knew not a lot of people, knew about it. And I mean, it's not really taught in the American school system. So like, a lot of people wouldn't have that type of knowledge. But I think I also like read after that the Google alerts, like when the show premiered for the Tulsa Massacre, like were off the charts, because everyone was trying to figure out, one, if it was real or not, because I mean, it is a fantasy show. So they were like, oh, is this like an actual historical event, or is it just, kind of a concept that he came up with? And then when people found out that, no, it actually happened, they were like, oh, wow. And so more people started looking into it. So, yeah.
And the fact that it started so viscerally, I mean, it started, somewhat calming. You see what's going on in the greater scope, and you just are dropped into that. And there is no way for that not to affect the viewer, just like, what's this new show from, the world that we think we know or that we've known for 20 or so years, to this is not at all what I expected. And you're just dropped into, this life, and they leave you with so many questions right at the beginning that unfold organically over the series as the characters in the present discover their connections backwards to Tulsa.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
and one other thing. It was interesting in that Watchmen, I went back through it, I just kind of flipped through the graphic novel, was, for lack of a better way of putting it, very white, except for the newspaper stand owner. And this was a very black series. And I think that, and then going back to Stefan's point of, it resonating with people of the time, I think that it was interesting to see how they not only kept it within the world of the Dr. Manhattan world, but they went from here's a segment of life to here's another section of life that we've not seen in this world before, really, and expanding on it and making it understandable and relatable for hopefully a lot of people.
Yeah, it definitely was. And, it's something where I remember watching it. I actually watched this with my wife, who she is a white woman, and that first episode got her so off kilter that she kind of had to take a second. She's like, okay, what did I just watch? And for me, I wasn't educated about Tulsa until after I'd finished high school and college and everything. And that's when I started kind of going into it. And then throughout the progression of the show, it went from kind of having this shocking and almost uncomfortable beginning to now this level of understanding. And that was something where towards the end, to see some of what happened towards the end and to have those resolutions, and especially when we were watching it only like a year or so ago, to start having these world events kind of start kicking off at the exact same time. All of a sudden she starts seeing so many things of like, oh my god, and I'm just like, it's been around, this isn't new.
Not new.
So it was something where I think just taking that harsh reality of a beginning, making everyone go like, this is what it is, we're not going to sugarcoat it, definitely makes it where you have to, in a sense, like anyone that would have had any kind of wall, it immediately gets shut down. It's just like, nope, we're telling this story, but it's like it is loosely based from this actual event that came on. So real quick, before we kind of go over into a different topic, I do want to highlight one of Valerie's comments right there. Do you like how the TV series uses John, aka Dr. Manhattan's character? And I kind of posed that to you guys. What did you think about that portrayal through the TV series?
He's my least favorite character, honestly. So
can I ask, you say he's your least favorite character. Was he your least favorite character as Dr. Manhattan, as Cal, or both?
As Dr. Manhattan, for sure.
Okay.
It brought up some like weird spiritual thoughts for me that I had to deal with. So I'll put, when I read the graphic novel, especially. Mm-hmm. So that's I don't have great history with him.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually enjoyed, I'm on the opposite side of stuff. I actually enjoyed this version of Dr. Manhattan because he was in the backseat, if that makes sense. Like, this is not a Dr. Manhattan driven story. This is a Sister Night driven story. And, when she is interacting with Cal, for me, it was just really nice to kind of see that dynamic on screen. They are truly partners. There's nothing that she keeps from him and vice versa. They're really just raising these kids that they've adopted since her partner was murdered. And so, they just have such a strong family unit. So I loved that part. And I can honestly say that I never saw it coming that he was Dr. Manhattan. Like I truly didn't even think about it, honestly. Like when I was watching this series, I just saw him as Cal. Like it never even occurred to me that he could be, a form or an iteration of Dr. Manhattan. But yeah, I guess I feel like, to Steph's point, this story wasn't really centered on him, and we really didn't get much of Dr. Manhattan until like the very end almost. It's like, I think maybe even just the last 2 episodes, if I remember correctly, was really the only time we saw Dr. Manhattan. But I think it was mostly just a stepping stone for her. I mean, in the finale, we all assume that, with the egg, that she becomes Dr. Manhattan, which is perfect to me. I'm like, yes, but I had no clue, kind of going into it, that Cal would be Dr. Manhattan, or that Dr. Manhattan would even be a part of Sister Night's journey, because they had so effortlessly, I think, woven in her backstory with her family that I wasn't even thinking about it. So to me, in terms of the writing, I was like, dang, that's really great writing, because I truly didn't even think about this. Like I was not even concerned with it. But yeah.
I actually am on that side as well. I didn't mind Dr. Manhattan being in it. I don't have a huge problem with Dr. Manhattan, but it was interesting to see. I was one of the people who was like, oh, Dr. Manhattan's on Mars, and I bought that hook, line, and sinker the entire way through, until it's like, oh, that's Dr. Manhattan. Cal is, the shock of that. And for me, the fact that he was willing to give up everything for the chance of grounding himself again and being a normal person for a while, and watching him go from in the movie and in the graphic novel, where he had just lost all of his ties to humanity and became this distant being, and going back to I miss, or feeling that emptiness or whatever that drove him to become human again, or that connection with Angela that drove him to be human again. And then, knowing that it was not going to end well, but deciding it's worth it for this moment of time in this journey. And yeah, so I was fine with him being in the movie. Sorry, Steph.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's definitely something where, like, for myself, like, I appreciated it. It wasn't like, for myself personally, I kind of sat there, I was like, oh, okay. It felt great having him so far removed from the story that by the end, when it was like, and here you go, Dr. Manhattan, I kind of sat there, I was like, awesome. I see how all of this connects. It was basically just sort of like another cog in the wheel. So, like, there wasn't any sort of significance to me other than just like, this now makes sense. Okay, all right, it's like perfect, so I appreciate the way they handled him, but true, it was something where I love the fact more that rather than worrying about the almighty being, we got to see things from Sister Knight's perspective, and it was her story. Because largely that's, when you look at the entire story, going from Tulsa to the very ending with the pool, it is her story, absolutely. And even kind of bringing on that, when we think about just the character of Sister Knight, it's, herself, oh my God, I couldn't ask for a better character, not only to be in that world, but a better character to be portrayed at all, and to really leave me with this sense of like, you just said everything that I wish I could say, and you stand for so many things that I hold true to. So yeah, like I'm so happy that Sister Knight is ever a thing.
Not that kids should be watching this, but I want to see so many like little cosplayers of Sister Knight at the next con.
It's going to be so cute when we, finally get to go back on life. Then, oh my gosh. Yeah, I agree with you, Stefan. Like, man, Sister Knight is one of the top, she's a top tier character. Like, the fact that they created her in our lifetimes, it really feels like dynamic for sure.
Yeah.
And I love the way they just wove the how Angela became Sister Knight, because there's like this one thing that she's always seen but never been able to watch, because her parents are like, you're not old enough, and they just kind of glommed onto that and then made that character her alter ego, her undercover alter ego on the police force, and how she just owned it, just like, yeah, we're just not taking any crap from anybody, and go. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
One quick thing for KB, you were saying that you liked it up to at the pool scene where she could become Dr. Manhattan. Would you be okay if she just fell into the water and did not get the power, and just had to continue as just Angela and or Sister Knight?
Oh, that's a good question. I would like to see her become Dr. Manhattan because, I do think, to Steph's point, a lot of people have a very complicated relationship with the character. And I do think it would be an opportunity to kind of reshape that, like kind of revamp that. But Sister Knight's gonna be fine either way. Like that, you know what I mean? Like, she does not need the egg, because she is going to be the same kind of fierce, dynamic woman that she is regardless. So I kind of feel like, a part of me really wants that Dr. Manhattan piece, just so that, she can be elevated to the next level and, do some things that we've never seen before in that regard. And, but I do also feel like she'll be fine. Something that, cause I do see a comment about like, Lindelof saying like not coming back, and would someone else take on the challenge? But I will say, I don't necessarily want a season 2 of this version. Like, I'm fine with the way that this story was told. But there are so many like dynamic performances by the kids in the show that I wouldn't mind if they did something else taking on the children, because there's so many different kids in here with different perspectives that have different ties to everything. And I definitely wouldn't mind seeing what that looked like in a few years, like what if the kids kind of took on this, took on some of these alter egos and some of their parents' roles, and what would that look like? So.
Yeah, that actually brings up a really intriguing kind of thought where I honestly hadn't really thought about that before. But when you think about the kids over inside that family, when you realize that for a while they were raised by Dr. Manhattan, and then their mother was Sister Night, and what kind of mentality do you now take on once you actually discover that? And thinking of if there were another season, that opens up so many possibilities, especially when you see the differences in the children. You know, you take that boy and it's like you could go either direction with that boy. You know,
And also, we can't forget about Lady True's daughter as well, because Lady True's daughter, yes, because Lady True is also, you know, kind of, I mean, there's so many like family twists and turns in the show just in general, but like just Lady True being who she is, and she's not necessarily, in my opinion, she's not necessarily all villain, right? Like she just has this interesting way of viewing the world and a different perspective. But even her daughter kind of growing up in that environment with such, gosh, I can't even describe Lady True. She's just very like cut and dry with everything. Like, oh, sorry, Robert.
She doesn't have time to sugarcoat it. It's like,
yes,
here's what's going to happen. Here's your option. Choose one, and we're going to go in that path, and we're not going to look back.
And
she was definitely Adrian's kid in that sense.
Yes, yes. And I could see Lady True's daughter going either way as well, because, you know, you're talking about the son, but I could really see her choosing, you know, I'm going to, for lack of a better phrase, say good or evil. But, you know, I could see her going either way just because of how she was raised too. So I would be interested in that kind of story and where that could go as kind of like a second one. But
yeah. I mean, that really speaks to the power that, you know, that these writers and directors and whatnot were able to create. Is you have a story that is so strong that when we're sitting here thinking about what the possibilities could be, everyone starts throwing a possibility, and it's just like they're all intriguing and they're all possible, you know, through everything, and it's not even centered around, like, it's not centered around the characters that were the focal point of, you know, of this series and whatnot. I really think that's amazing. Real quick, I kind of really want to stay with a little bit of this theme that we were kind of going with, the vigilantism and whatnot. How do you all feel about the portrayal of vigilantism, especially with how we see the parallels going on in our current national situation?
I like the portrayals. I like the way that they didn't sugarcoat that, you know, the 7th Cavalry, their brand of vigilantism versus the police's brand of obscure the identity, you know, hide who you are, enforce the law. And then they had the scene at the beginning where the 7th Cav, and I can't remember who it was in the 7th Cav, driver of the pickup truck with the lettuce in it, you know, gets pulled over by a black cop. I was like, well, there's a role reversal for modern days, just like, you know, he's just kind of like, oh, and he starts talking back to the officer, and the officer's like, do you really want me to? He's like, whoa, nope, I don't want that. Watching that little interaction was just like unexpected for me. But watching how, you know, all of the secrets that everybody kept and how they unfolded, and then also watching Jean Smart's character, Laurie, knowing that she was the second Silk Spectre, and how she went from being a vigilante to being a vigilante hunter, and, you know, being what she said, the top FBI's top vigilante hunter, was an interesting twist that I also did not expect. But just watching her kind of interact with Angela, knowing her secret and knowing her own secrets, and watching that blend. One thing I wish I'd seen more of in the short time we had Dr. Manhattan would have been how Laurie dealt with the fact that she had a relationship with John in the movies and the graphic novel, but John went on to marry somebody else, or came back and married somebody else, and just seeing how that small triangle unfolded would have been fun.
I think
But
we
as far as
saw
the
kind of like,
vigilantism goes, I thought it was good. And, there were like definite parallels between the modern, what we're living in today, and how they were treating it. And I think that he did a good job of showing how dark that could get very quickly and very easily.
I think to your point about kind of the triangle, I think we saw like small glimpses of it. I actually am kind of glad they didn't focus that much on the love triangle aspect, but we saw small glimpses because when we meet Lori in this series, she is still like very much heartbroken over Dr. Manhattan, which is obvious. And then she keeps telling Cal that he looks familiar. Like there's always, like when she meets him, she's like, there's just something about you that I feel like I know you and I don't know why. So I do think like once he was revealed, it would have been interesting for her to kind of get that aha moment. But I kind of feel like she already knew. Like I kind of feel like she had an inkling of some sort, maybe.
Fair.
But in terms of vigilantism, I'm gonna go with Robert and say, for me, it's interesting that Sister Night, she started off, as a cop in Vietnam, if I'm remember correctly. She started off as a cop in Vietnam. And, when she moves back to Tulsa to really kind of find her roots, she's still a cop, but then, of course, she's a vigilante. And I always feel like there's a fine line like between the two, because both people, a vigilante and an officer of the law, I think they both feel like they're doing the right thing because they're providing a service and they think that that service is really to protect everyone. And so I think in this show in particular, like they really, really hit the nail on the head in terms of balancing both. Because you see that it really is the person behind the mask, that's causing kind of the issues. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's like, how do they view the world? And so one of my favorite characters actually on this show, sorry, my throat is so dry, is Looking Glass. And so I really enjoy Looking Glass because he has a really hard time like navigating, kind of the good versus bad of everything. He wants to be very straightforward, but of course he has like a whole lot of trauma that's happening from, being in New Jersey on the night, that very fateful night with with Adrian Veidt, excuse me. And so he's having a really hard time dealing with that trauma, but he also has a really hard time navigating people. Like that's something that we see. And so he's kind of like, okay, like I follow the rules and, if we follow the rules, then, like maybe everything will be okay. And, that's just not the case. And so he's one of my favorites in kind of examining that as well. And he also gives like, honestly, one of my favorite lines in the series when Angela goes up to him and she's like, did you know that, because they were talking about, this is when Don Johnson's character, so when their captain, Judd Crawford actually, or the chief, when he passes away, and she finds his KKK, robe in the closet, and she goes to Looking Glass and she's like, did you know that he was in the KKK? And he was like, he's a white man in Oklahoma. Like, I assumed he was in the KKK. Like, you should have assumed it too. Like, so.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why I really kind of like this particular, well, I don't want to say like, but that I wanted to ask this particular question is this just because it was a conversation I was having last night with an actual police officer. And we were talking about the current affairs where, he was mainly just going like, I don't get it. People hate me for this and that. And I was like, it's not about you. It's about so many others that make, and I'll just say me, just because I'm a person of color. It's like that make me feel unwelcome at all times and whatnot. And how this particular show showed the area of the police force and vigilantism in, they showed the good points, they showed the bad points, and they showed also this middle ground of like, you don't really know who's right in this, and how much it's such a complicated, it's a complicated issue when you're sitting there looking for justice. You can't just sit there and go, this side's right, this side's wrong. It's there's right and wrong on both sides, but it's not about the right, it's about fixing this issue, you know. And I think that's where that's where the actual show did a great job of handling, no, it's about fixing the issue, not about bickering about who, you know, who's right and who's right and who's wrong, you know. So that was something where I just again, I love real, like, I want to go and make sure how we've been talking about the show itself, but also the impact of the show. And when we're thinking about impact, you know, not just overall on world events, but we also see just entertainment in general, we look at the Emmys and the list of nominations that this show got was astounding. So when I look over at the question posed by Movies That Make Us, as a person of color and a nerd, how does it feel to see the 27 Emmy nominations for a story like this?
I mean, it feels good. I'm not gonna lie. Just because, you know, this story is rooted in a historical truth that happened, you know, so many years ago. So it's a great jumping off point. So it, for me, like having the Emmys kind of acknowledge this show acknowledges kind of more than just the art for me. And, you know, to Stefan's point, like you were saying that the show really tackles kind of, we need to solve this issue. And I think the show did a brilliant job of really showing kind of the underbelly of the government and how literally, you know, the system is broken. It has been broken because of the way that it was built. And I feel like, you know, getting these Emmy nominations, like, for people to have this body of work and to be able to see it and understand not only the historical context, but also this, you know, supernatural elements, because I feel like there's a combination of both, obviously. It just really speaks to the fact that, like, wow, like finally is the only word that I can come up with. And, you know, now children, I say this kind of often, now children can have this, or like little Black kids can actually watch this show and take so much away from it. But also people who were unaware, like we spoke of in the very beginning, of this history and, you know, kind of this, you know, massacre that happened in Tulsa. Hopefully what I hope this art does, and not just with Watchmen, but with Lovecraft Country 2, which is on HBO now, I hope what they do is I hope they can start to do additional research and really start to find out more information. Like, I feel like the Emmy nominations shine a brighter light on this particular body of art, if that makes sense. And I'm hoping what people actually take away from it is more knowledge, that they are actually more curious about, you know, the historical facts of Watchmen. And they're like, I want to do more research. I want to learn more because, you know, this truly is there's way more. I guess that's what I should just say. There's way more. And being a Black person in this country, you know, I know a lot of historical facts and truths, just that, you know, like my family and my friends, and just through like a lot of research that I've done that I know about, and I want the rest of the world to be able to see that and understand and know. So
yeah, you know, to kind of go and put a lot of this, you know, in perspective, especially when we're looking at, you know, the role that Regina King portrayed, where, you know, she was going for outstanding lead actress in a limited series or movie. The other nominees during that time were Kate Blanchett, Shira Haas, Octavia Spencer, Kerry Washington. These are all fantastic actresses that gave amazing performances when we look at, you know, all the series that were going on at that time. But one of the things that points out to me the most is the fact that Time magazine actually named her one of the 100 most influential people in 2019. We see the level of impact that her performance was able to go and, you know, to go and have on, you know, on that year alone, which was amazing, you know. But then as a person of color, you get this sort of like pride and energy, you know, especially for myself as an actor. I look at that and go like, the role model to go and you know, to follow is established right there, you know, as an actor, as a person of color. you look at that performance and it quite literally changes the way that I now walk into every audition, that I walk into everything that I do. Is, you know, Regina King actually set a level of precedence in my life, you know. So not only just to be nominated, but to have this other standing to it. I mean, like I said, the show is fantastic. I've got nothing bad to say about it. But then her as an actress and her performance quite literally has changed the way that I actually live my life.
I love that. I love that you said that. Yeah, I feel like there's so much I could say. There's so much pride just being a Black woman and seeing Regina King. And I've been watching her my whole life. And, you know, I watched 227. I've seen her career from top to bottom. And she's always been a force. And I do feel like it's nice that, you know, over the recent years, she's finally been getting kind of that appreciation, and she's been getting the accolades that I feel like she's always deserved. I will say, oh gosh, I don't even want to say it, but I'm like trying. I will say that she is a force as an actress.
Yes.
But as a director, when you guys see what she can do, like, honestly, she is truly the one to watch. That's what that's what I'll say.
Okay.
She always has been, but she will continue to be.
Cool. Can I go back to the vigilantism point for just 1 second?
Yeah, go for it.
Because it ties back to the kids possibly carrying on the role. But as far as legacy goes, looking at what we knew about the Hood of Justice from the graphic novel and the movie, what we knew, just this guy in a hood, and then finding out it's a Black man who's got a little bit of face paint across his eyes, and then seeing Angela as Sister Knight do a similar reverse, a darker face paint to hide her identity a bit was one thing. But the legacy of not knowing who her grandfather was, and then adopting a role, in law enforcement, and also in law enforcement because her grandfather was a policeman in New York, and then, became a vigilante, and then she becomes a vigilante and a police officer herself. Just watching that parallel was amazing, just seeing how it carries on. But then I cannot remember the adopted son's name, the look on his eyes when they went through the bakery and they go into her Sister Knight cave, or whatever they refer to it as, and that look of, holy cow, my mom is Sister Knight. And that look of, I could easily see where we're saying that it would be good to see the kids in a few years, how they deal with it, watching him become her effectively Robin, so to speak, or if something happens to her, him picking up the mantle and becoming his own character. So just the way that it has moved through that family, regardless of Dr. Manhattan's influence as Cal, or later that last little bit as Dr. Manhattan, I think does provide an interesting possibility and potential.
Yeah, and like I said, that just goes to the power that this entire show has been able to go and do, the possibilities that go with it. And I don't think that this is a show specifically that could have come out at a better time. It's just something that, like I said, it shakes the ground in a way that you just can't get past. I noticed that we're kind of coming up over on time, but looking at some of the questions I see down over here, do you all think that this show could have actually come out at any other time for seeing, kind of looking behind us? And I mainly say that just because I couldn't really see, anyone kind of taking on this sort of storyline at any time, nor do I think would have the grace to be able to go and handle it the way it did. I kind of look at everyone that was involved and go, like, perfect fit, perfect time, go for it. Whereas 3 years ago,
it would have been different. I don't think we would have gotten what we got out of this series. 3 years ago, no. 2 years ago, maybe. After Black Panther, for example, proved that there was a market for audiences who want to see a character that looks like them, or with some diversity. Just in general, I think that late 2018, 2019 definitely, but I think that it hit just right, and being able to tell the story and bring a version of history or a part of history that a lot of people had absolutely no clue about. Or, you drop the story about Philadelphia in the same way, where there was the bombing in Philadelphia that nobody talks about. And bringing such a horrible and ugly thing in our American history to light, and making it a focus or a focal point for a character's story, and then moving that story forward. I think that this was the right place, right time, perfect combination of things.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I do find that everything kind of happens in its own perfect timing for a reason. So I do think that this particular show is at the right time, but I will kind of counter a little bit and say, in 2017, we had another show that I don't know if you guys watched called Shots Fired, which was centered, it actually had Sanaa Lathan in that particular show, and she was a Black woman cop kind of navigating a lot of different waters. So we had that at that time. Regina King also was in 7 Seconds, which on Netflix, and that was in 2018. So I think that we still had stories that tackled a lot of different things and pieces of those over the last few years. But I still think that Watchmen, kind of fit in at the perfect time. But I do still wanted to just kind of say that, yeah, we did have some other art out there and bodies of work that were, kind of tackling things from a different perspective at that time. But yeah.
And there have been things, even before all of those, there were other things. And when you first posed the question, my first thought was, well, we had Roots back in the 70s,
right.
But what if we had really that just dove in, tackled these things, and put it in America's face, not just in a minority space where it's like, hey guys, take a look at this thing, but put it out to a wide audience. And let's face it, HBO, for this to come out on HBO and for it to be just right there in everybody's face, I think was fantastic.
Yeah.
This is kind of like a silly question, but those titles that you mentioned, KB, I don't think I've heard of. For it to come out on HBO is more mainstream, more out there. But what would your advice be to get more diverse content so that we don't miss art like that, so that we can be more aware of what's going on?
Yeah. So Shots Fired actually was on Fox, which I have a very complicated history with Fox because, man, that Sleepy Hollow situation I was like, guys, and then Pitch is a great show, and they canceled Pitch too. So, I'm like, Fox. But Shots Fired was actually on Fox, and then, 7 Seconds actually on Netflix. But I feel like there's a lot of diverse content coming out, more than ever kind of at this point. And, to Robert's point and your point as well, Stephanie, HBO definitely has kind of allowed Black women this space to kind of create their own art or shine in the forefront of work. So I will say this summer in particular, just for people looking for diverse content, if you want to see some truly dynamic art, but I should put a trigger warning on it because it is around sexual assault. I May Destroy You from Michaela Cole, who did Chewing Gum on Netflix. This is her show, and it is top tier. It's definitely one of the best shows of 2020. Came out on HBO this summer, fantastic. And then right now, Lovecraft Country. I feel like this is the summer of Lovecraft Country. It is a truly dynamic show. I really don't want people to compare it to Watchmen. I know they want to in a lot of ways because, it is really centered on the Black experience in America and, combating racism and things like that. But Lovecraft Country is kind of its own beast, they're just kind of in two separate genres, in my opinion, but they both are tackling racism from that perspective. So I'll just say kind of those two shows. And then also, because you did mention Stephon, the Emmys, and Kerry Washington, I believe she got nominated for Little Fires Everywhere. If And that show is fabulous, and it's on Hulu. It's also really, really good. So
there we go. Yeah, I figure we could probably go and talk about this entire subject for hours and hours and hours. But yeah, it's like we're kind of closing up over on time. I definitely want to say thank you guys for joining me over on this panel. I hope that we get to go and do this again when everything kind of normals out. But yeah, big thank you, and hope that everyone in the audience definitely enjoyed it. Make sure that you all go and donate. I know Steph is gonna be going and get you guys with that raffle winner. So again, thank you guys so much for joining me on this panel.
Thank you.
Yes. You guys are
Thank
so
you.
fantastic. Sorry, there's a train going by, which is really annoying right at the end here. I love this panel. You guys spoke really well. I just kind of sat back and listened because I wanted to hear what you guys had to say. The winners for this raffle, the prizes I showed earlier today were, drum roll please.
Yeah, I was like,
Susan Sanders and Adrian White. So I'll tag you guys and you'll just arrange it and I'll get that prize to you. So thank you guys again. And I hope you have a great afternoon.
thank you.
Thank you.